honestly find it offensive that doctors and coaches treat human beings like a fucking spreadsheet. I'm just a data analyst. I'm connecting the dots in a way that hasn't been connected up to this point.
Expert in using data-driven bioengineering and metabolic science to maximize human output, Nathan Carvalho.
People are just put in this position where they are the architect. They need to be sitting above every discipline and connecting the dots. They are literally the middleman in the most complex discipline that we have, which is the human body and human existence. What I'm interested in is like getting people out of this situation where they have to know absolutely everything and just try to like map and figure out the situation themselves, because honestly, you can't. People just want a quick fix. They used to be, 75 hard or like a yoga workout in front of your TV in the 80s and like all this shit. Now it's just peptides. It's just supplements. And I don't tolerate that in the slightest, bro. I fucking hate it so much.
So what's the number one difference between research and real life that you need to adjust to as an architect like you?
Fuck, there's so many differences, but like in general.
Nathan Carvalho, welcome to the Hack You podcast.
How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing really well.
Thank you.
They call you the human optimization architect. Can you please explain to me, A, why, and what does that mean to you?
Yeah, so the thing is, I'm not a coach that just like sends you a diet and a training program. A lot of my clients, they actually have clients. I mean, they have coaches already, and a lot of the people that I work with, they work with a team. So I am sort of like the overseer of that team, who's basically connecting everybody together and moving people in the right direction. So when I'm building someone's program, I'm not building the program from the perspective of like, oh, you want to get from point A to point B? Cool, here's your protocol. I don't have a protocol. I don't have a template. Every single one of my clients has a different thing. Like I work with a very select group of people, and my programs are not like the most affordable programs for this reason. I literally sat down like last week and I spent 8 hours working on one particular client's protocol. So that's like, what I'm doing is I'm connecting the dots in a way that hasn't been connected up to this point. So health in terms of traditional medicine and just how we understand specialization as a whole since the Enlightenment, it has been segregated. So everything is in silos. You have a guy who takes care of your gut, you have a guy who takes care of your thyroid, you have a guy who takes care of your training, and then that person can't talk about your diet, but then the dietitian can. But the dietitian can't tell you about supplements, so you got to have someone else. And people are just put in this position where they are the architect. They need to be sitting above every discipline and connecting the dots. They are literally the middleman in the most complex like discipline that we have, which is the human body and human existence. So we have also like these competing systems where your doctor is trying to get you to not die, but you have the goal of what like Aristotle talked about almost 3,000 years ago when he was talking about the sense of human flourishing and what the philosophers call the good life. So what I'm interested in is I'm actually interested in giving you the good life. I want you to thrive. And the reference range, it can only tell you where sickness begins. It cannot tell you where flourishing starts. So what I'm interested in is like getting people out of this situation where they have to know absolutely everything and just try to like map and figure out the situation themselves, because honestly, you can't. There's a paper in the year 2000 that came out that's laying out the 5 orders of ignorance from computer science. And the first order of ignorance is obviously you know the thing. The second one is you know that you don't know this thing, so you can look it up, you can ask questions. The second order of ignorance is what fucks people up. People don't know what they don't know. So they assume that like, oh, because my doctor's an idiot, and then there's like all of these guys talking about supplements and peptides on Instagram and YouTube, I can totally piece this thing together, because after all, I'm a fucking electrician, or I'm an accountant, or I work in New York. Like whatever the fuck the reason is, it's like when you think about it, it doesn't make any logical sense, because it's like, oh, you really are outside of your depth here. Like I just had someone send me an email and be like, hey, can you send me the invoice? I would like to schedule a consult. And I said, hold up. I don't even know if I can help you. Like, let's actually talk a little bit before I can commit. But people, they just assume that they are the most capable person to help them. And in reality, that's not the case. So what am I offering? I am this autistic fucking person that is literally obsessed with fucking learning. I have the goal of in 2026 reading 5 academic papers a day, and I've been upholding that goal and beating it even more. The course that I have that is on the link on my website for the academy right now on the thyroid, we literally cover and go over 1,300 papers together, like very much in depth. That is the level of like commitment that I have to like your protocol and your optimization and knowing everything so that I can connect you to the best people and get get you to the best results that you want in the order that the body wants. That's the specific caveat that people dislike to hear, because the body moves in a set order of operations, and you have to nail that sequence in order for things to work correctly. People experience this. Your audience has experienced this. You probably experienced this. You tried Retta once and it works amazing, and then you try it again and it doesn't fucking work. Or you put in testosterone and you feel amazing, and then a few months pass and like it doesn't work. What changed? And no one can figure it out. And I'm like, yeah, the context changed, the environment changed. You're planting the same seed, but the soil is different. What I'm doing is I'm creating a cohesive picture about all of this, and I'm architecting a plan that's going to be moving into phases that your body in particular wants to move towards, and in the right direction to get you to that goal eventually. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. I think from the audience perspective, again, the reason why I was so excited, obviously, I listened to podcast that you were on, and I was blown away by the depth and the commitment that you're showing. But the statement of being the architect, being basically above the coaches or the experts that your client or the
I don't like the word above. I don't like the word above. It's a collaboration. Like, even for coaching, I don't see myself as standing above the clients. Before I even send you the contract, bro, I need to know that you can work in collaboration, that you can keep communication going and stuff, because I'm just a data analyst. That's all that I am. So I'm like in the co-pilot seat telling you like, hey, take a left, take a right, because you want to get to this destination. They are the ones driving. They are the ones telling me about the destination and their state and all this type of stuff, you know?
I think the word above didn't mean that you feel yourself is superior. I think that you're connecting the dots. From an audience perspective, besides the fact that you're autistic and that you read 5 academic papers, can you give us a little bit of 2-minute background to how you got where you are today, to be able to connect the dots, why you're so excited about connecting dots, why you realize that's probably your calling, just based from conversation that I have with you or listen to you. It feels like your commitment level is just beyond.
Yeah, it is, and it's because I have to do it. Like, I just don't have any other choice. It's not in the sense of like, Eminem. I fucking love Eminem. This is an Eminem pension. I literally have an Eminem tattoo in my leg. But like, for him, when they asked him like, hey, what would you be doing if you weren't rapping? And he's like, maybe basketball, because it's literally the only thing that I did well in my life, but it wasn't to the same level as rapping. That's not the case with me. I've been a music producer. I've been literally sitting down in conversation with Universal Studios and Sony Music before, like when I was a fucking teenager. I have taught like languages in universities, like outside of the US. I taught in the largest institute for some of the like ancient languages that we have in the world. I've worked in academics in translation and transcription of manuscripts. Textual criticism was once my passion, is reading ancient manuscripts and figuring out stories about scribes and all these things. So why am I telling you all these things? Because you literally asked me like, what makes you special about biology? And then I'm telling you, well, I did music, and I did archaeology and and I did like languages and all these things. The reason is because I don't have a myopic view. So that is what I'm bringing to the table. Most people, they are looking at blood work. I just taught a lecture to my students today. They're looking at blood work as a list of yes and no. So if it's red, which supplement can I throw at it to make it not red? That's literally the level of reasoning. Now, people think that once they're like paying for a consult with someone, you're getting much more than that, right? No, you're not. It's literally just like an hour to like pick someone's brain. It's fucking awful, which is why I do my consults differently. But it's just all like it's analyzing people like a spreadsheet. Human beings are not a spreadsheet. There's a big problem in religion and a problem in philosophy as a whole, which is the problem of identity, which we're trying to describe what makes a human a human. What are the essential and the contingent properties that make a human a human? And we have to deal with the aspect of dualism, which is qualia is basically the experience of tasting something or feeling something or experiencing something. So, for instance, I can put a scan in your brain, and I can see that when we put sugar in your tongue, this area lights up. But I have no fucking clue what you are experiencing, your first person perspective experience. So from this point on, we can already understand that human beings are not just a brain on a stick of flesh, right? It's much more than that. I don't see human beings as a spreadsheet, and I honestly find it offensive that doctors and coaches treat human beings like a fucking spreadsheet. So I am, and can I curse here? I didn't even ask about that.
Well,
Okay.
now it's
Too late.
17 fucks in, yes, you may.
I'm so sorry, but I just that's just how I talk. It's no offense to anybody. And people asked me before, was like, why do you curse so much? And I was like, dude, I don't know. But when I was a child, my parents literally took me to a doctor because they thought I had Tourette's. And I didn't. It just turns out I curse a lot. And I grew up in an evangelical house, went to an evangelical school, and I only had evangelical friends my entire life. I have no idea how I started, but I know that when I was doing my master's, I got so interested in cursing that I traced the history of cursing around the phallic and the scat theme from ancient Greece all the way through today in modern English. I just had to figure it out.
Nathan, we're bringing you back to the health
Yeah, bring me
optimization
back.
aspect.
So the reason
So,
why I have all these things is because I connect multiple dots. So when I'm thinking about blood work, I'm thinking about computer science, and I learned second order biology. When I'm thinking about analyzing blood work, I think about the problem of identity from philosophy. So you're not therefore a brain on a stick. When I'm seeing things, I'm not just trying to make the numbers look correct. I'm trying to paint an entire narrative. Human beings are by nature storytellers. So that is why I, coming from the background of being a storyteller, come towards this direction in this way. The reason I got so involved in this, and for the long version, people just watch the first episode that I did with the DDT method. I broke down my whole story in like 20 minutes. I'm just going to put that stuff on my website because people ask me this question all the time. But I got super interested in this because my own health was fucked, just like every other coach. And doctors tried to fix me. They fucked me up. Doctors told me I was going to die. I saved myself. Doctors told me there was no way out of this particular disease. I reversed it. Second particular disease, there's no way out. I reversed it. This particular like physical problem is going to take me out of the gym. Dealt with it. So I started like fixing these things on myself, and people would always ask me how to like fix this thing themselves. And I've basically been telling them until the point that I realized like, oh man, like I should definitely do this thing because I love this. Like I was in school learning about religion and languages, but I was still opening papers about like neuroscience and psychology and psychiatry and all of these things. So it just always called me to it. And the fact that I have this like multifaceted background is what allows me to see things under a different light because everybody's just staring at it from the perspective of what number should look like. Give me the right numbers. Here's my blood work. How do I fix it? And I'm like, that's not how human beings work at all.
so tell me, if you take it from the research perspective, and that obviously you deep dive into research, and then you go into the real world and work with real people, what's the biggest difference? What's the number one difference between research and real life that you need to adjust to as an architect like you?
Fuck, there's so many differences, but like in general, studies, they are very poorly designed sometimes. Like you see some studies, I'm not even going to cite examples, but you can't really design things extremely well sometimes because of like just ethics and just the logistics as a whole. But like with a client, I can literally make one change at a time and I can see how their body responds to that, right? So I can run a more controlled experiment, so to speak. Obviously, I'm just not controlled in the sense that they're living in my house and I'm monitoring everything that goes in their mouth and stuff. But at the same time, people don't hire me just to get a six pack. It's legitimately one of the questions that I ask. It's like, why do you want this? And if there is no why behind it, I'm like, I'm not your guy. So it's just that is probably the main difference. And the other one is, well, I'm not restrained by whatever guideline exists. So sure, the guidelines can say that we should go for T4 monotherapy. That's been updated in 2014, right? Okay, well, 2016, we get a study on deiodinases. 2018, we get a study on the DIO2 THR92 ALA variant. 2024, we get a study with 630,000 to 254 people. And 2026, we get a study with 1.26 million people, the largest data set in history ever done by the fucking Bianco group, which is like the greatest researcher that we have and the most influential person that we have in thyroidology as a whole. I'm learning from them. The guidelines hasn't still been updated, but I can update based on a paper that I saw this week and start changing my approach right now. So I'm not restrained by that. So they can say, yeah, like, dude, they can say like, oh, you can't reverse Hashimoto's. I'm like, no, no, no. You can't because you are trapped by guidelines. You see studies as a prison that you cannot like reason your way out of. I see research as a starting point, as something that I'm then going to think about it. If it wasn't for George Murray in 1891, basically looking at three isolated factors and just piercing them together and reasoning out of them to then like have this crazy idea of just smashing up a sheep gland and then putting in an injection and feeding to this 46-year-old woman dying of myxedema, we would have never solved hypothyroidism. And we did because someone literally looked at the data that we had and they extrapolated from it, healthily speaking. So that is another thing that I don't that I can do. But the difference between me doing it and generally speaking, the functional health or the neuropaths and the holistic crowd doing it is that they lose the academic rigor. So I come out of academia. So that's another reason why my background like plays a role here is because I want there to be data. If there is no data, I'm not going to put a supplement just because in a cell study it looked like it could potentially be useful. Like I don't give a shit about that. Like I want to know about what is actually going to move the needle. I don't want people wasting money or time and I don't play lab rats with these people. Like I just want the things that actually work. So we're able to like step ahead of the evidence and stay at the frontier, which is very interesting because everything that I've been saying about T3 online, you look at all of the papers that are mapping out the direction in which the field is heading. We're standing there. Literally, the people who are like in my thyroid content and in the engine, dude, they're already there. So they're literally just watching the field turn towards them and come towards like T3 monotherapy or at least combo therapy as a whole. Whereas the research is still like, well, there is no guideline, therefore we cannot even do anything about it. I'm sorry. Maybe it's depression. Here's an SSRI. Have a good day. See you next year. Like,
I think before we go dive into thyroid T3, which I'm one of my exciting topics for today, I want to start first that some of the approach that you take is that you go way beyond, gym and training. So you think more cellular. And then one of the initial standpoints is when you want to achieve something physically, you start with your mitochondria.
yes.
Can you share a little bit why you think cellular first, mitochondria first, before you start everything else, just from an audience perspective, what that actually means to them?
Yes. So a note on starting points. Okay. That is a reference. That is like a general sense of direction. But if you think about any part of the body as like, okay, this starts here. So like ask anyone on the internet to explain the thyroid. They are either going to start at the hypothalamus or the pituitary or the thyroid gland. Okay. The problem is it doesn't technically start anywhere. It's a loop. There are multiple loops. So like the reason I'm starting somewhere is because, well, just think about like building a foundation, right? So whenever you're building a house, you never start with a roof. That doesn't make any sense. Where do you start? You start on the thing that everything else depends on. Okay, what is that thing? What is the thing in your body that you need to contract a muscle, to set your metabolism, to like fucking have a thought? Like you can't have a thought. You can't have an erection. You can't poop without this thing. What is it? Is the energy factors inside of your body that are literally powering the whole operation. So you can have this perfect building, but if you don't have enough power, nothing is going to run. So the power literally comes from the mitochondria, right? So that's where we're going to start because we need to power up the engine of everything else. Now, that does not mean that everything is going to start with the mitochondrial protocol because we can talk about this, but what's going to like set up how many mitochondria you have? What's going to decide how hot the mitochondria is going to run? What's going to decide how much ATP gets thrown off as heat? That is actually T3. So technically speaking, T3 sits above the mitochondria. Well, but hold up a minute. Because your thyroid hormones, they're literally controlled by something else. They're controlled by your adrenals. So maybe we should start everyone on the adrenals. You see how like if you just keep chasing this like quote unquote root cause, you will never end because it's always a loop. So I just started the power as the foundation because in general, people just have shit mitochondria. And then when I fix their mitochondria, they respond better to everything else. And if the body always starts everything with the mitochondria, and if everything depends on the mitochondria, I want to make sure that before we start anything, you don't have bad mitochondria laying out. You don't have a bunch of unused parts. You have the maximum number of mitochondria, and they are running about as efficiently and hot as we can possibly get. So that's what I want because I want to restore actual energy. So like in the first few months or well, few weeks of working with me, generally speaking, we're going to be doing an energy phase. And this is where I get people like off of like, dude, get off of your fucking Adderall, your Vyvanse, your caffeine, like everything. Let's build actual energy. And then they feel like shit for like a week or two. And then they feel fucking amazing. They're like, man, I can't even understand how I depended on so much stuff before. It's wild.
So I think now comes a point where the audience is like, okay, cool, mitochondria, let's start with that. What do we start with? How do we start with? Let's talk about the cleanup. Let's talk about the buildup. What can they do? How long do they have to do it for? Give them a little bit of a starting point. I understand it's generalized because everybody's unique.
Yeah.
But still, we need to give them a little bit of a direction here.
Yeah. It's very challenging, man. And I face this every single day when I'm like making content because I'm like, how do I talk to the majority of people in a generalized way? But then they're gonna want specifics and they're gonna roll with that. And I'm like, you have what I'm giving you is a picture of a crowd, but like that doesn't tell you what job you should get. It tells you how many, like, what's the odd that people in that crowd are gonna have that job. They're mostly gonna work in tech if they live in like, I don't know, fucking the Silicon Valley, right? That doesn't mean that you need to work in tech. So I'm just presenting you the picture of a crowd. Um, First of all, understand what the mitochondria is doing, right? So I'm not going to bore everyone starting with like before even the Krebs cycle and like the ingestion of oxygen to like kick off everything until we get to the turbine and ATP synthase, or to even like worry about the fucking like how fast your mitochondria is spinning or just getting too complicated or anything like that. Let's just think in terms of like what does your mitochondria need in order to transport electrons from one complex to the other complex? In other words, when you're creating the process of energy, you're literally tumbling down electrons down these complexes that don't connect with one another. And you need to make sure that one, these electrons are not going to fall off entirely because that's just going to create heat, but not energy. And you need to make sure, so you need the membranes, right? And you need to make sure that the electrons literally reach the next part. So they need to be transported because the complexes don't touch in the mitochondria. They are separated. So what's going to do that? Okay, for complex one, riboflavin is extremely important. So literally, if you're trying to optimize mitochondrial function, but you're not taking a B vitamin, like what the fuck are you doing? Um, at the same time, what's going to move complex 2 and 3? Well, that's going to be CoQ10. What's going to move complex 4? It's going to be creatine and magnesium. What's going to set the integrity of the walls? Phosphatidylcholine or ALA, right? The thing with ALA that I dislike is because ALA is context dependent. So on high stress or low stress, it's literally going to dictate whether your thyroid hormone is going to be activated or not inside of the cell. So you need to start understanding your own context to figure out what compounds you need, what compounds you don't need. But this is what I'm laying out. This is like the most basic foundation. Like if you want to learn more about this, there's a free book on my website that I'm literally laying out all the cofactors and stuff because I see people like spending so much money on SS31 and methylene blue and everything, and I'm like, why are we spending all that money when you're not even taking magnesium correctly, right? Like you need the magnesium. You're not taking creatine. Like, what do you mean? You need creatine to transport it to the ATP synthase step, the fifth complex, so to speak, right? So that's a good place to start. If you want to like actually measure and run this as an actual experiment, there is a test that you can do by mito.me, mitome. It's basically going to measure your mitochondrial efficiency from 40% all the way to 140% efficiency. So you can see like which complexes are impaired. And then what I would say is build a plan that's going to work on that complex in particular until you basically get them to full function. Now, these tests, they have not been validated. They say that they have been studied. They didn't publish the studies. There is one test that is on complex 3 that a doctor has to order and we have access to it, but it's just very expensive. It's very, very niche. And if you're just going to measure complex 3, like, why would you do that? So just run the other test, but take it with a big fat grain of salt as your like, this is just a general point. But like what I do with my clients, we run one at the beginning of the phase. And if they're able to, we run one at the end of the phase and they can literally see like, holy shit, my cellular efficiency literally went from 40% to 120%. Like that is insane. So it's a visual, like it's a number, objective number, well, sort of objective number on like what you're actually experiencing, which is that more energy, more flourishing and stuff like that. Now, when we're thinking about mitochondria, right? Like if you need more mitochondria, right, you need to build more mitochondria because more mitochondria means you have more tissue that is packed with engines to produce energy. Therefore, you can do things like force production more. You can literally grow more muscle. Or if you have them in your brown cells, that's going to throw off more heat, which is thermogenic. Which you have them in the white cells, this is going to throw like even more fat burning and lipolysis, right? So all of these things, it depends on how much mitochondria you have, but also how fast the mitochondria is running. There are tools that are going to like influence that. So we know that SLU-PP332, it influences PGC1 alpha, which is the big like build more mitochondria signal in your system, right? The thing is, cardio also does that. So does lifting. And if you want an enhance out of it, like T3 does that. So like let's start at the fundamental level. Like, are you training and are you lifting? Like, are you doing cardio? Okay, cool. Then you can think about mitochondrial biogenesis. Could you throw in PQQ, which is a supplement just for this? And I'm like, yeah, but do have the T3 in place first because PQQ only decides how many mitochondria you have, but it doesn't set how fast they're going to run, how efficiently they're going to run. T3 does that. So like, I really like to see T3 in a mitochondrial protocol. It's like alongside of the basic cofactors, so to speak, you know?
So I think now is the point where we have to talk about T3. So I heard you talk about T3 in a previous podcast. So I started researching it. And then typically, as most of us do, you go to your AI, you start talking about T3, and
Oh God.
the AI comes back and says, don't even think about touching this.
Yeah.
If you touch this, you'll screw it up. The
Yeah.
downsides I'm talking about, I mean, catabolic, your thyroid overall functions going forward, it's going to be chronic, and all those things.
Did the AI actually
Is
tell you that? Did he? Because I don't
all of
use.
it.
Oh really? Okay. Do you have that
So
answer like in front of you? Do you have like pulled up like what it said?
no. That's not right now, but I did this probably a month ago when I listened to you. Because
Okay.
I went down. I was like, okay, so I've nobody in any stack that I've heard has ever talked about T3, especially at that extent that you do. So I was like, okay, bookmark. There's something new. I have to find something out because everything else that you mentioned, so from SLUPP, from all the other things, SS31s, and all those things, we all did that. We all implemented that at some point.
Yeah.
But the T3 aspect was the one that I was most interested in. And literally, before you can proceed and think about building it in, the red flags just jumped up. So, can you explain a little bit what T3 is and does? Why there might be a perception out there, and I think you already answered that because of the research from 12 years ago, right? And why its perception is it's so dangerous, but also, and this is important, when I listen to you about dosages and intake, how you use it yourself, it's not straightforward.
No.
It's several times per day, different dosages, and then there's other things to consider. So I think I would love to take 5 to 10 minutes just on T3, just to better understand, the background, the aspect of it, but also the implementation, and most importantly, why would you do it?
Okay. So, fuck. There's so many questions. Literally when I started studying this, I create lectures to myself to listen to and dive deeper on things because I'm a fucking nerd. And I basically came up with about like 112 hours of content on this. And specifically, there's about 18 hours of content that answers the question that you have specifically, which is like there's this a generally bad perception about T3. Like, why are you talking about it in such a positive light as if like this is just well-known established fact? Like you don't even bother like proving this stuff. Well, in my courses, I do bother proving it, but in general, I just don't find that people are persuaded by arguments. Jonathan had the political scandal. He just basically proved that people respond to stories and not to logistical syllogisms. But the point is, to understand how T3 got a bad reputation, you got to understand the history of it. In 1800, there was a condition. There were those three conditions, but just simplified. There was one condition that people just got cold. They got foggy. They basically lost so much of their energy. They got fatigued. They lost muscle. They gained fat in their midsection. They got swollen. They got puffy. They lost their hair. They lost their nails. Their nails were literally split in half, and their mind would just downshift into slower gear to the point that it would eventually fade away, and then you died. That was called myxedema. That was a death sentence. There was literally no fucking way out. To simplify the story, in 1891, this guy, George Murray, had a brilliant idea of injecting, because they had already figured out, like, hey, we did a bunch of autopsies. Everyone who's dying of this shit, they have a fucked up thyroid. But they didn't even know what the thyroid was in the 1800s. They thought it was just like prop up the neck, like just to make it aesthetic. Some people thought it was a protection for the neck. They had literally no idea. So like later on, with more things being developed in the late 1800s, this guy was like, oh, so it is related to the thyroid. And when this other dude put a piece of a thyroid gland underneath the skin of this woman, she got better. She wasn't fixed, but there's something that goes in the blood. So let's parse this thing together. Boom, inject this woman with an extract of sheep gland containing both T4 and T3, and she comes back to life. And this is the first instance in the history of medicine that hormone replacement was instantiated. So hormone replacement literally starts with the thyroid, okay? But the extract had two things. It had both T4 and T3. So how the fuck do we start healing the problem and solving everyone's problem? Literally, people came back to life with T4 and T3. And then nowadays, fucking 130 years later, it's just T4 and T3 is bad. Don't do T4. How do we get there? Well, it's very, very simple, but it's basically guilt by association. So a few years later, they were basically developing, the company Armor, which was not a pharmaceutical company, was a slaughterhouse, as a matter of fact. They had a bunch of pigs. So they were the first ones to basically come up with the medication that was T4 and T3, which was the gland, which was the granular stuff, right? The stuff that people still take today because it got grandfathered in under the 1938 grandfather clause, which is not a supplement and is tried to be taken out of the market as well. But in general, that's what they were taking at that time. A few years later, there was a test, the radioimmunoassay. This test was so fucking precise that it was able to measure low and normal deviations very, very well, to the point that Yalo, one of the researchers that came up with in the 1970s, won a Nobel Prize, because now it's the first time that we can measure stuff. And when we measure the people that were taking thyroid hormone from granular stuff, guess what? They were all over the place, dude. Some people were overdosed, some people were underdosed. So immediately, in one single day, TSH became the standard rule as to how to dose someone. And then, because they wanted to deal with the fact that, like, hey, these doses are all over the place because you can't control granular. The T4 to T3 ratio is 4-1, whereas in a human is 14-1. It's all over the place. This is not how a human is supposed to take. So at the same time, the chemists, they're isolating the T4 molecule. And at the same time, the thyroid researchers, they basically figured out the diadenases. So your body's going to convert T4 into T3. So you have one specific test that measures exactly what it's supposed to be, like your levels in your blood. You know that the body's going to convert T4 into T3. That's a theory. It was a hypothesis. They never proved that, but they reasoned it out. And you have one clean molecule. Like you said, T3 is messy. T4, you take it once a day, bro. You don't have to worry about shit. It's just, that's it. That's a solution. So T3 got associated with all of the heart problems, the palpitation, the issues that people were having. They assumed it was because of T3, not because of the T4. So they took the T3 out, led the T4. Years down the road, people were researching more and more and more and more and more of this stuff, because in science, you have to validate and test every hypothesis. So T3 got exiled by guilt by association because it wasn't that glandular, when the problem was really glandular stuff. It wasn't that T3 was in the picture. So we started studying, putting head-to-head trials, comparing T4 to T3, which never happened before. We started seeing like, hey, yes, we have more thyroid receptors in the heart, but does that mean that a palpitation means heart damage? Oh, it turns out T3 downregulates collagen expression, so it's literally anti-fibrotic. I was like, okay, you put people on T3. Do they live longer? Do they live less? They not only live longer, but they have less risk of dementia, 27% less risk of dementia from the Bianco 2026 paper. And they also have about like a quarter less mortality rate. So you put people on T3, and like T3 is literally making a comeback in the research, because we also know that your body cannot reliably convert T4 into T3. There's tons of things that mess up with that conversion. That conversion happens out in the tissues. So you can literally have picture perfect blood work, but your tissues are starved, which is actual diseases are like this. They're literally built like that. Like you have people who have some issues with their MCT8 transporters, which are basically going to like haul it around like inside of the cell. These guys, dude, it's crazy. They have like hyperthyroid like muscles, but then let's say they have a hypothyroid brain. So they literally can't think. There's no nootropic or peptide that makes these people brain fog go away, but they lose muscle because they're hyperthyroid there. So it's like it literally changes where things are in the body and stuff like that. And when you look at the research, T3 is being redeemed. It's being just basically shown as like, no, this is the thing that actually like works in the tissues. That's the only thing we care about. T4 has to be converted into T3. That conversion is extremely unreliable. As a matter of fact, the THR92ALA genetic variant, which is one that makes the conversion impossible pretty much, it affects over 60% of people. So this is not a niche thing. Like if you do a genetic testing, there's a little bit over 60% of chance that you convert poorly. How can you bypass that? T3 directly. Okay, like what is the issue? Is the issue that T3 is not reaching the blood? Yeah, then why give it T4? No one is fucking mega dosing vitamin D, zinc, and tongarali to get their testosterone levels up. We just inject testosterone. So that's just the same logic applied to T3, right? Hormone replacement therapy should be, in my opinion, always testosterone, growth hormone, and T3. You don't need insulin because T3 literally sets insulin sensitivity. But yeah.
So to answer the question, why you would add T3 is because it optimizes the efficiency for your body to create it, right? But then once you have it, what can you expect? So take myself, right? 41 years old, thyroid issues for the last 15 years. Now, never tried T3 in my life. Let's say I start taking it based on the protocol dosages. And let's say I have an average response. Is that something that in 2 weeks' time I will feel, in 4 weeks' time I will feel? And then, yes, what would I feel? What would I experience?
Your gland, it makes mostly T4, which is a storage hormone, which is why whenever you start taking T4, your doctor is going to tell you, let's review it in 6 months, because it takes several weeks for it to stabilize, and they're also assuming in there that you're not going to be consistent with your dosing. So to move a ship that big, it literally takes a long time to steer that. T3 is fast. It literally it peaks within 2.5 hours. In 5 hours, you feel the effect. So like, when people are like, I took it 30 minutes later, my heart was palpitating, and I'm like, that's not the T3. It's pharmacologically impossible for me to T3. In T3, the effects in the peak are decoupled, which means it's kind of like it's the sun is it's closest to the earth at noon, but you're only going to feel how hot it is at like 2 to 3 p.m. because it needed time to like hold up that energy. With T3, you don't need that time. So that time is just like a matter of hours. So if you do it T3 today, like next week, you can do blood work and it's already going to show a completely different level. You're going to notice that within a matter of minutes, like or within a matter of hours. Where are you going to notice? Well, every tissue that T3 touches, you're going to feel that. So let's start with like, because that's the question. Like, so what? So why would I do T3? Because it just like builds more mitochondria. I'm like, no. Okay. In muscle, T3 is going to set the rate of the cycle of your muscle tear down and build up. So it literally builds both at the same time. So like the whole concern that people have of it being catabolic literally doesn't make any sense. As a matter of fact, researchers have literally gotten individuals and they removed their muscle signaling from them, and they just starved them of they added T3 and they removed food, which means like you're catabolic, right? Because you don't have any food, and you have T3, which is more catabolic. So they will lose muscle. No, T3 is protective. It literally protects that cycle against muscle loss. So the research that people say is like, oh, it's so bad. Ask the people who are telling you that what levels of T3 you see in the blood when that is happening. It's literally like approaching 30. Like I'm here talking about moving your thyroid from like a 3 to like a 4 or 5. Like we're talking about true thyrotoxic myopathy, which is an actual muscle wasting disease. That does happen with T3, but it's only if you have an actual disease. So you can't like stare at the edge of the cliff and see this like thing coming down and just paint the entire road for everybody in any context the same fucking color. It just doesn't work that way. Let's think about insulin sensitivity, right? Okay, so nutrient partition is super important for muscle growth. Well, what sets insulin sensitivity? Well, you need the sugar to basically be hauled inside of the cells by these transporters called GLUT4 transporters. T3 builds more GLUT4 transporters. Also, it sets how fast they react, so they pull sugar faster. Also sets how sensitive they are once it's inside. So it really sets your whole insulin sensitivity paradigm from the beginning. What else? Growth and recovery. Literally, the T3 molecule and IGF-1 is literally born out of the same place in your body. Like whenever you are slowing down the energy production for recovery, you bump down IGF-1 very drastically, which can happen when people have low thyroid dysfunction because a good chunk of that is converted in the liver, and IGF-1 conversion happens in the liver as well. So again, you want to optimize filtration systems, kidney and liver? Well, T3 literally sets how fast that happens. You want to optimize muscle contractions to build the most muscle through like circa-2A. Well, circa-2A is through IGF-1, but circa in general, T3 does that. You want to analyze like brain function. Like, dude, T3 is so powerful for cognition that when it comes to treatment-resistant depression, people that do not respond to SSRIs, what is the medical intervention for that? The medical intervention for that is to give people T3, regardless of where their thyroid levels are. Why? Because T3 builds new serotonin receptors, and it also sets how sensitive they are. So now the serotonin receptors that you have, you're going to have more of them, and they're going to be more sensitive to the medication. So it works amazingly because it also works on like norepinephrine and adrenaline, which is like that get up and go, your drive signal. So what do you experience? Better muscle gain, better fat loss because you have those receptors in the tissue as well. You have like, oh, but what about the heart? Well, you have a bunch of TR alpha receptors in the heart, which is the whole reason why TR beta drugs like resmetirom hit the market. And we do have tissue selective drugs on the thyroid, which proves the whole hypothesis here. But the point is, you are with your heart, you are basically setting how your heart is going to pump blood, how efficiently it's gonna contract things, and it's gonna set the speed of the atria. So the atria is literally the part that becomes very sluggish because it's packed with thyroid receptors. If you don't have enough thyroid hormone, your heart literally becomes very brittle, but then your blood vessels also become very stiff, and you get the whole problem with like blood pressure and like all of these issues. Bro, you literally can get sleep apnea from low T3 because the gel-like fluid that comes out from hypothyroidism, it literally builds up around your trachea and your tongue, and it starts closing up your airways, which is one of the reasons why people with low levels of T3, sometimes they have a deeper voice because that gel even gets around their vocal cords and stuff like that. So even your voice can get better with T3. What your hair is literally set by a clock. Your follicles are either going to be in the cycle of growth, or which is very energy intensive, or they're going to be in a cycle of holding and then dropping those hairs. What gives it energy? T3. What's going to set basically how much time it spends on building versus holding? T3. So even your hair, your nails, which is one of the reasons why people with low T3, they have hair loss right here in the outer third of their eyebrows, because this is the fastest cycle that you have out of your whole hair in your body. And it's not male pattern baldness because it's an energy system that is coming down. That's basically what low T3 is. It happens alongside your entire head. It happens all over your nails and all these things. So from beauty to cognition to muscle growth to fat loss, sleep. Sleep is another huge one. Dude, T3 sets the how efficiently those systems are going to run for every part of your body. So when you think of like, let me throw 40 different supplements, one for everything, why don't you just take T3? It's just one pill, you know? So yeah.
That's, again, from an overall impact perspective, that's enormous. But also the one thing that I realized that I think is important for the audience perspective, if there's something that you will feel quite quickly, as you said, a couple hours in, that means that the half-life inside of the body is quite short, which also means that
24 hours.
If for whatever reason you don't like it, you can come off of it and there will be no long-term effect. Is that something you would agree with?
Not only I would agree with that, but I would say, guys, you are so quick to jump in TRT when it takes like 6 months to over a year to recover. The HPT axis on your thyroid, it literally resets a max of like 5 weeks, 2 weeks, and you're good. And if you just wean the dose down and add carbohydrates as you're coming off, and you give all of the cofactors, that is even faster. So like, I literally see thyroid function bouncing back in 2 weeks. And I've also never met someone that added T3 and was like, fuck this is not good. But about 80% of the guys who hop on TRT, they come off, right? Because there's way more things involved when you're playing with all those hormones. By the way, your sex hormones and your fertility, they not only receive orders from T3, but they also talk back to T3. So like, estrogen literally sets up how much free hormone you're going to have if your gland is damaged in any way, which is fucking crazy that all these things are connected. But it's the lowest bar of entry out of every hormone.
So you said prior that from an HRT perspective, I think the three main characters are testosterone, growth hormone, and T3.
Yeah.
But I also heard you say that when it comes to fat loss and fat mobilization, that T3 is also top of the list.
Yeah.
So how do they combine? So how does T3 work with GH and testosterone? That's the first question. And then the second one is, most people who are trying to do GH and testosterone are trying to build muscle, but if T3 is also fat burning, is it the same mechanism or is it something separate? Is that like the growth hormone release increases, so you have more muscle mass burns more fat? Is that the idea behind it?
I mean, we got to understand that your body is always running multiple things at the same time. So people are like, oh, I want more mTOR, I don't want AMPK. I'm like, bro, you're running both at the same time. So it's kind of like, if we're worried about like, oh, lipolysis coming from T3, like when I actually want growth, then you shouldn't be using growth hormone, because growth hormone also liberates free fatty acids. So like,
Absolutely.
you know, but like when we're thinking about in terms of like creating a complete system, let's say I want, something that's going to add a little bit of bump in energy and drive in my life, right? I'm going to start with T3 as the lowest bar of entry, is the cheapest hormone. It doesn't have an injection. You just take it twice a day and you're freaking good. You just got to time it right. But any coach worth its salt is going to be able to tell you how to time it. And then you just take that. And then if you want a little bit extra drive, let's put in some testosterone. If you want some lipolysis and recovery and stuff like that, we add some growth hormone. Why do we add all these three? Because they're basically like the three hormones that are taking care of everything in your body. So like, you don't need a bunch of other stuff. You can just do it with the holy trinity, so to speak. So your testosterone, like, I don't want to oversell that T3 like sets everything in the testosterone. Like, we literally have studies that you give people like a bout of stress and you can literally see their testosterone levels going up, because cortisol also influences your testosterone levels. So I'm not like overselling it, but like, when you think of your sex hormones, they like your estrogen and your testosterone, they are in conversation. Well, your estrogen is going to set how much free testosterone you have through like thyroid binding globulin. and like thyroglobulin and albumin as well. Um, when you think in terms of like what are the things that pair very well with testosterone, we all know growth hormone pairs very well with testosterone, but growth hormone comes at a cost, which is insulin sensitivity. It literally is an insulin antagonist, right? So, how can you reset insulin sensitivity? Well, T3, because if I just add insulin, well, one, that could be dangerous for people, but two, that's also going to result in beta cell loss and fatigue of the actual pancreas. You can measure that in like amylase tests and stuff. So I just don't I just it just seems it just fits. Like they all like talk to one another and they all depend on one another, so to speak, and they complement each other very well. So like when you're thinking in terms of like, oh, but I want to build muscle, so why would I add something that burns fat? You're not adding something that burns fat. We just talked about like with the you're literally adding something that sets the speed at which your muscle is going to recover from a breakdown. You're literally working directly on the circa pumps, which are like your calcium channels and all of these things, right? Like it's your contraction speed. The whole reflex test that you do in your doctor where they hit your knee and they see your leg move. Actually, the speed at which it comes down, it's measuring your reflex, which is measuring your T3 status right in the tissue. So that's what this test is. You want better contractions, you want more T3. That's just like how it is. Now, everything is a U-shaped curve, right? If you have too little testosterone, you're not going to build muscle. If you have too much, your system is going to be so overloaded that you're not going to build muscle. If you do growth hormone, too little, you're going to die young. Too much, you're going to die young. T3, too little, you're going to die. Too much, you're going to die. So it's like, it's all about finding that optimized zone, and your body actually has a set point. This is a theory that has been very, very well established. Your body has a set point specifically, like you, Vadin, has a set point. I can't tell you like what's the best level to aim at for you unless I know you. And that band is so freaking tight. Like it literally doesn't move like according to the band. So like a TSH band, it goes from like 2 all the way to like 4.55, depending on the researcher in the lab. Like your band, it might be like 2 to 2.3. Like it's just that tight, right? Like estradiol for me, I feel great at like 20 to 30. Like you put me over 30, that's a problem. Put me under 20, that's a problem. It's just very, very tight. And finding that is a little bit of an art, so to speak. Yeah.
You mentioned insulin sensitivity. I think that's an aspect where a lot of people are worried about going into HRT, that they could cause insulin sensitivity in the future, obviously leading to diabetes and all those kind of things. What's your whole thought process? Because I heard you saying about, insulin sensitivity is like a house with tired rooms, jammed doors, and like everything like not working appropriately. And is cutting out carbs is that the starting point, or what would you do in that case?
Yeah, no, if you have an insulin sensitivity problem, basically like you're hauling a bunch of groceries to the door and insulin, which is the delivery guy, is like knocking on the door for it to open. But since you're not sensitive enough to hear that signal, you're not going to bring the groceries inside. So the glucose just piles up in the freaking front door and it never comes in. And that causes the insulin resistance. And right, insulin resistance was going to cause your diabetes, right? But there are different reasons why that could be the case, right? I like to tackle it from 3 different angles, but in general, it's going to be lack of power. It's going to be too much stuff clogging the doors, not enough doors, or just the house is not running like hot enough to be able to pull that stuff in. So there are different tools that are going to act differently on this. T3 is going to do something very similar to MOTS-C. Like MOTS-C is going to set like a separate door for glucose to come in apart from insulin. So T3 does that through GLUT4, independent of insulin as well, which is very, very neat. And the whole like fear, I don't know where that fear comes from, like fear of like hopping on TRT and then like losing insulin sensitivity, like that. There's no like causal link there. I can't see like where the fear would be coming from. It sounds like it just comes from an oversimplification from like a famous podcast or something like that. But I don't know, like in the research, like nothing comes to mind on like what would set that. You would lose insulin sensitivity with growth hormone, but what you have to understand is like when you're looking at the research, these guys are not training, these guys are not like eating right, these guys are not in an anabolic environment and everything. So even the negatives that you see, they can be very much combated, just depending on like what you do, so to speak.
The one thing that you just mentioned, MOTS-C. MOTS-C is an interesting peptide where I'm a fan of MOTS-C personally. But when you speak to experts, it's probably one of the few peptides when it's very clearly where they say MOTS-C is great, but not for everyone. And not like in the typical where, everything is personalized, but like, hey, there is a percentile of people out there for whom MOTS-C might be dangerous. What's your personal opinion on MOTS-C, and are those people correct?
Well, I hold that opinion for every compound, including T3. So I would say, yeah, absolutely. There's instances in which it's not going to be good. Like one thing that I don't see people talking much about, but I would love to get people to actually fucking talk about it, which is the fact that MOTS-c causes heart enlargement in mice. Are we not dealing with that, like with bodybuilders? Because people are worried about taking T3 in their heart when T3 is literally anti-fibrotic. It's the only thing that that a person can add to an anabolic arsenal that is anti-fibrotic, which is the main issue that you get out of cardiac issues from anabolic use. So, like, I just don't see, like, every single compound has a context, right? You add a SOU to someone who's already like heavy on the demand, below on the supply, they're gonna feel like shit. You add MOTS-c to someone that literally like has broken mitochondria, great. You make bad mitochondria talk better to one another. Like you add a bunch of T3 to someone that literally doesn't have the fundamentals in place. It's like you're going to lose muscle, and you're also going to be revved up the entire time, and you're going to have anxiety. So I just think the context is important for everything, which is why I'm so big on, like, if you want to do this thing yourself, you have to be a fucking genius in terms of like self awareness, objectivity, isolating variables, and all this type of stuff.
Okay. So the MOTS-c aspect, though, let's say is a positive aspect.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard you talk about MOTS-c as something that you would use pre-workout, especially pre-cardio workout.
Yeah.
Confirm that.
Yeah, so I just time it that way, but it's not for anything specific. I just find like MOTS-c 5-amino SLU, they can be a little bit stimulatory to some people. So I just time it early in the morning. The reason I like to time it is because I like to like have like everything kicking in at once. So you have your T3, your MOTS-c, your 5-amino, like your SLU, like your clenbuterol, ephedrine, your himbine, like everything kicking in at once. Bro, you just make that fat burning machine a beast. And what was supposed to take 16 weeks now takes 7 or 8.
Yeah. But I think if we go through what you just said in terms of, again, let's talk about the SOUPP, MOTS-c, and the 5-amino 1-MQ.
Uh-huh.
Is that one of the stacks that you would consider because they're synergistically so well put together that you would use them on a regular basis? Like for the audience, is that something you do on workout days where you lift, or is that where you cardio days or recovery days? How often would you do it and for how long?
Okay, so I don't think I have a single client on 5-amino 1-MQ right now. I think I have a handful that are on MOTS-c, and I have some that are on SOU. But I am on a plan to add all three to my protocol. So the rate that I'm running right now, I found through my blood work that I have the beginning of insulin resistance. And then I want to test the hypothesis, which is everybody tells you got to be lean to reset your insulin sensitivity. And I'm saying, no, you do not. We can make that happen before. I put on the most amount of muscle when I was 18% body fat. So regardless of what people are saying, I think that there's something there. I think people put too much emphasis on being lean equals insulin sensitivity and being fat equals insulin resistance when that's not the case. So how would I pair them? The way that I like to think about it is like, okay, so let's say that your house has a little bit low energy, and the reason we can't bring the glucose inside of your muscles is because the house it's too fucking tired to care. Maybe that's why you have insulin resistance. And then once it gets pulled in, the rooms in your house, they're so filled with trash, aka fat, which is why 5-amino is used in obese mice. But people in the optimization world, they only use when you're lean, which is backwards. But you are going to solve that problem in particular. So you feed the body energy, you work through the NNMT signaling and an NAD supplier, and you get the sirtuins back in place. What does 5-amino does? It literally cleans the rooms out of that stored fat, so now there's more room, and it's also going to make the doors respond again. So you knock on the door, and the door already starts responding. Absolutely great to have it at the very beginning whenever you're restoring some insulin sensitivity. At the same time, I like to have something like SOU. Why? Because SOU is building more rooms, so it's building more places to take on that glucose, and it's also turning up the furnace on every single room of the house. So the house itself literally becomes hungry, and independent of insulin, it starts pulling everything in. It's kind of like it hears the DoorDash coming through, and it's already at the door, like ready for your Amazon delivery, so to speak, right? Just like fucking ready for it. So I run it alongside everything, and also it's building more and more rooms as you go. So it's like a long-term use tool. Once I'm done running with the 5-amino for a few weeks, I like to have MOTS-c because MOTS-c actually doesn't fix insulin sensitivity. 5-amino does. SLU does. Mot-C is just going to not deal with the door at all. It's kind of like, oh, the door is jammed. Who gives a shit? I'm literally just going to make a hole on the door that leads directly to your muscle, and I'm going to make your muscles pull glucose in regardless of where your insulin is at. So like if you're like in an emergency, like, man, I'm just a very tail end of my growth phase and I gain a little bit of insulin resistance, how do I make sure I still gain muscle? Mot-C. Fast Direct is just going to work directly without you having to fix the whole thing. But if you're thinking in terms of a sequence, starting with 5-amino and fixing the house and then just forcing more signaling directly to the muscle, it's going to be a fantastic way to work in the growth phase. So that's how I'm reasoning through it right now. And I'm doing blood work every 2 weeks to see like how this thing is like playing out. And I'm already seeing a result. Like literally in 2 weeks, my glucose went down from 110 to 93. And my cortisol also dropped 3 points. Fructosamine also dropped. C-peptide also dropped. So like the pancreas is even working less, which is really nice. And my insulin literally went from 7 to 3.8.
I think from a tracking perspective, again, I love the fact that how open-minded you are in terms of introducing new things and then also putting your first on it and other clients on it. But after you have the N of one for yourself to fully understand what you're actually doing. From the audience perspective, what we like to do when we start coming closer to the end of the episode is we're trying to do some quick fire conversations where like quick answers just to get a mindset perspective.
All right, let's do it.
Right now in the fitness industry, what's the one thing that bothers you the most in terms of a trend?
Quick fixes that get masqueraded as optimization. Like people are just like, they used to be 75 hard or like a yoga workout in front of your TV in the 80s and like all this shit. Now it's just peptides. It's just supplements. People just want a quick fix. And I don't tolerate that in the slightest, bro. I fucking hate it so much. Yeah.
One supplement you'd never give up on?
B vitamins.
Oh, good. Mitochondria, yeah. Most overrated peptide right now?
Overrated?
Overrated.
Yes, all of it. No, they really are overrated. And there's so many problems with the peptide space. It's just freaking crazy. But I think overrated. Honestly, I think Mot-C is overrated as a fat burner. I even think SLU is overrated as a fat burner. Like people basically talked about SLU as like a substitute for clenbuterol, and I'm like, you either never use clenbuterol or you never use SLU because it's really not the same thing at all.
So would you just say that's not a quick fire question? Is because there is a clenbuterol and SLU. The people think it's similar, but clenbuterol is much stronger.
Yeah,
from an effect perspective.
Yeah, much stronger.
What about the side effects on clenbuterol?
Deal with them.
Okay,
avoid them.
Fine.
You know, like what are the side effects? The tremor, okay, add taurine. The cramping, taurine and potassium. The sleep, magnesium. The cramping, magnesium. The heart rate, nebivolol. Like the anxiety, it's ramping up too fast. Just slow down. Just start the dose slow and bring it up very slowly.
Yeah.
Like it just solved every single problem, you know?
Most underrated thing that costs nothing.
T3.
A trend right now that you don't think gonna age well.
Mixing peptides. Like creating very complex stacks of peptides. Bro, we don't even know the receptor of BPC 157. Like, I don't think people realize how rudimentary it is. Just because we can talk with very complicated words about the parts that we know doesn't mean that we don't know the most of it.
Okay. What do you think, or what do people skip daily that they should be doing?
Light. So your mitochondria literally has these cells called cytochrome C oxidase that are sensitive to light. And light literally sets your circadian rhythm. Every hormone in your body depends on a circadian rhythm. Even your TSH goes through a circadian rhythm, which by the way, spikes at night. So if people are like, T3 is going to keep me up. And I'm like, no, it spikes at night. But in any case, what I feel like it's the issue with light is that like people, they think it's kind of like some woo-woo type of shit. So I also see people misunderstanding. They go for like red light first thing in the morning. And I'm like, no, you want like a blue, bright fucking light, like sunlight right in your eyes within like 10 to 15 minutes of waking. And then having blue light glasses like 4 hours before bed. I'm not even talking like 2 hours or 1 hour. I think that's a massive fucking thing that people are missing. I could also add grounding, human touch, going out to hang out with your friends, and having meaning and the teleology behind the things that you do. all of these things, they are part of my protocol at least. Like I add time for you to breathe, time for you to like sit down. Like I do box breathing with my clients. Like I do all these things because the payoff is immense. And you got to understand, the person telling you this was a person who thought that every single one of these things that I just told you about was so ridiculously bullshit. I was so not bought in on any of these things. Then the more that I understand the research and the data, the more that I'm like, okay, yeah, I know it's definitely like a big lever. Yeah.
Awesome. Dude, Nathan, appreciate you, man. This is incredibly insightful. Again, as expected, the energy and the volume of knowledge is just, again, second to none. So appreciate you. For the audience perspective, where can they find more about you?
Brother, I can send you the link to my website, and you guys can put it in the description or whatever. My website is literally where you find everything about me, the way that I work, what services that I offer, how to find my educational community, and my free content as well, and all this type of stuff. And if you just want a hub for everything, Instagram, Optimal Nathan, everywhere on Instagram, on YouTube, my email, everything is just Optimal Nathan. So yeah,
Awesome, man. Appreciate you. Thank you for your time.
awesome, brother. I appreciate the opportunity. Have a good one.